All right, good afternoon. I see that both Adam and Ramanathan are connected. We see you. We thank, if we could put you up on the, if I could ask the technique, there we go. Thank you. So just a reminder that we're joined by our colleagues, Adam Abdelmoula, the resident and humanitarian coordinator for Syria, and Ramanathan Balakrishnan, the regional humanitarian coordinator for the Syria crisis. Adam is in Damascus, and Rama is joining us from Amman. So perhaps we'll ask you, Adam, to start, given that you're in Damascus, and then we'll move on to Rama. So please, Adam, you have the floor. Thank you. Adam, can you hear it? Sorry, if we could unmute the guests. Let's try it again, Adam.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. Good afternoon, everyone. Now, let me just begin by highlighting the fact that this is the most significant escalation of hostilities witnessed in Syria since 2019. It has been characterized by intense fighting that erupted in western Aleppo initially and quickly reached Aleppo city and advanced to northern and eastern countryside. And today, we are witnessing an escalation, significant escalation around Hama city. So this recent escalation of hostilities has caused many civilian casualties, displaced tens of thousands of people, interrupted critical services, and disrupted our humanitarian operations. Currently, the humanitarian community appeals to all parties to prioritize the protection of civilians, as well as humanitarian personnel, facilities, and assets in all affected locations. While the safety and security of humanitarian personnel is of paramount importance, the UN and its partners remain committed to staying and delivering, and we are organizing to undertake assessments and expand response as soon as possible in whichever way possible, whether directly across the conflict lines or across international borders. These latest hostilities come as the humanitarian response for Syria faces its largest funding shortfall ever, with less than 30% of the 4.1 billion humanitarian appeal for 2024 received to date. We have received reports indicating that dozens of civilians have been killed and many more injured, including women and children, and the insecurity is still restricting movements. Therefore, the extent of civilian casualties in many areas remains unclear. Shelling and air strikes have started on the 26th of November, the morning of 27th, and on the 1st and 2nd of December have been the most violent in Idlib. Over these 2 days, at least 33 civilians have been killed, including 17 children and 5 women. 125 others have been injured, including 51 children and 37 women, according to the local health authorities. These attacks have also affected 2 displacement camps, a water station, 4 schools, 2 ambulances, and numerous health facilities. Tens of thousands of people have been reportedly displaced by the recent fighting in Idlib, Aleppo, and Hama. While thousands have arrived in the central and southern regions of the country, many are trapped at front lines, unable to seek safety in other areas in the country. There are also reports of significant population movements from parts of Aleppo into northern and northeastern Syria. The priority needs at the moment include food, health, water, protection services, non-food items as the winter is setting in, and we are scrambling to provide as much assistance as we can, given the limited resources and the limited access. Some of the public health concerns are already rising, including due to the presence of unburied bodies and lack of clean water for days. Aleppo University Hospital sustained damage that has left hundreds of patients without essential care. University Hospital in Idlib city sustained damage after being hit by an air attack on the 2nd of December, limiting its operations to only emergency cases. At least 24 health centers in Idlib and Western Aleppo have suspended their operations due to hostilities. In Hama, more than 40 facilities have suspended life-saving and life-sustaining services. Some of the essential services that have been affected include, in addition to the health facilities that I just mentioned, also water stations and bakeries. The main water station for Aleppo city was inoperable for a few days before maintenance teams accessed the site and resumed the pumping yesterday. A water station in Atarib, Western Aleppo, was also affected on the 1st of December with its solar panels damaged, cutting off water supply to over 40,000 people. Bakeries resumed production on the 1st of December, but with limited production capacity and uncertainty regarding adequate quantities of wheat flour. Communication means have also been frequently disrupted. Schools have been suspended in many areas, and others along with the key public services have also been impacted. Disrupted electricity supply continues in all the major cities that I just mentioned, including Aleppo and Hama. And in Hama, 5 mobile teams supported by the UN have not been able to reach children with disabilities with their services in northern rural Hama. Several child-friendly spaces have also been closed. In Homs, a community center has been closed due to the insecurity. Families in the area are hesitant to leave their houses, even to access services, fearing for their lives in the current environment. So I appeal to all the parties to the conflict to prioritize protection of the civilian population and public infrastructure. Civilians must be protected at all times and wherever they happen to be. Let me stop here and hand over the floor to my colleague Rama to continue this briefing.
Thank you very much, Adam. Rama, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven. Thank you, Adam. Can you hear me well?
Perfectly.
Yes.
Great. Excellent. Colleagues, thank you very much for joining us today. I want to echo the comments made by the Humanitarian Coordinator, Adam Abdelmoula, and also to provide complementary information from the rest of the Syria. As indicated, the latest escalation comes after a period of increased shelling and airstrikes in northwest Syria since 14th of October. In fact, we have seen increased violence across many parts of the country in the last few months, including attacks in northwest Syria and northeast Syria that have caused civilian casualties and have damaged civilian infrastructure. I'm joining my colleague Adam in reminding all parties to conflict of their obligations under the international humanitarian law, which mandates the protection of civilians and the civilian infrastructure, as well as protection of humanitarian workers and humanitarian assets in the areas that they operate. As indicated earlier, through this ongoing escalation, we are seeing tens of thousands of people displaced. And these displacements are happening along various axes. My colleague Adam talked about the axis of displacement from Aleppo down south. There is also displacement Aleppo along the northwest, and there is also displacement from the northwest towards Aleppo and towards northeast. In the northwest, in the north of Aleppo, in the Tel Rafat enclave, an estimated 125,000 people are in the process of seeking refuge towards the northeast. The latest information received yesterday night, more than 5,000 families, amounting to anywhere between 30,000 to 40,000 individuals, have moved and have entered the northeastern region. And this obviously puts extreme strain on the humanitarian services and the ability of the humanitarian actors to support them in the northeast. My colleague from Northwest, the Deputy Regional Humanitarian Coordinator, David Carden, tells me that over 48,000 people have been displaced along the Northwest corridors. In Northwest Syria, the UN and its partners are providing food, winter items, protection and emergency wash services, and other assistance through reception centers hosting newly displaced and arriving families. As of 2nd of December, over 2,600 people, mainly women and children, have sought shelter in 12 reception centers with 15 NGO partners, maintaining a multi-sectoral humanitarian response. Partners are prepared to redirect part of their ongoing winterization response to support the most vulnerable households affected by hostilities. However, as my colleague Adam emphasized, the humanitarian crisis in Syria was severe even before the latest escalation. As we approach the end of the year, our humanitarian response plan that seeks to assist 16.7 million Syrians is only 29.5% funded. It has never been so underfunded in the history, if my memory serves me right. Given the volatility of the region that has also seen a recent massive influx into Syria of Syrians and Lebanese fleeing the violence in Lebanon, such a gap in humanitarian funding is bound to increase the suffering of the most vulnerable and will have significant consequences for the region if we immediately do not find ways of funding the response the way it should be funded. For example, in Northwest Syria, underfunding has led to suspension of aid and key critical services, including water and sanitation support, in hundreds of camps and in over 80 health facilities, suspension of services or drastic reduction of scope of services in over 80 health facilities. I'll stop here, but I want to thank member states for their contributions to humanitarian response in Syria, but I want to urge them, now is not the time to reduce funding to Syria. Now is the time to keep the faith and to ensure that the funding for Syria is received in the magnitude that it requires and it deserves, particularly given the recent escalations. I will stop here, but I'm happy to respond to questions. Thank you, and back to you, Sven.
Thank you, Rama, and thank you, Adam. We'll take some questions now. Amélie?
Thank you very much for the briefing. Amélie Bottelier from AFP News Agency. I was wondering, you mentioned all the difficulties of aid delivering, but we know that one of the main access points for this region are the 3 border crossing from Turkey. Are the Babalawa and the other 2 crossings still open? And do you think you could increase the amount of aid going through this crossing to help all these new displaced people by the new violence? Thank you.
Thank you. Which one, Mana, do you want to take that, or Adam?
Well,
I can take.
Let me try, and then
Go on, Adam. Go on, Adam.
Rama, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Adam. Very thank you. So the government of Syria, has recently extended the opening the consent-based approval mechanism for Bab al-Salam and Bab al-Rai, and that has been a very positive development. So we are currently looking at a situation where the needs of the people who have been affected by this escalation have to be prioritized. And what this means is that, as we have done in the past, we will use a mixture of modalities. We will use a mixture of modalities in the sense of be it cross-border or be it cross-line, depending upon which is a safe way to reach the people and service them the best possible way. And it is towards this that both Adam, the humanitarian leadership in the country, Adam and myself, will work towards exercising all possible modalities in order to reach the people who are in need. But Adam might have something to add on this. Over to you, Adam.
Well, I have nothing to add except to emphasize that the focus will be on the people and their needs. And for that reason, we will deploy all the modalities available to us and all the resources from all directions. The 3 border crossings remain open, and we will seek the extension of the consent-based mechanism when the current one expires.
Thank you. Deji and then Margaret.
Hi, gentlemen. This is Deji Xu with China Central Television. First, on behalf of the UN Correspondent Association, thank you for this timely briefing. I have basically 2 questions. Well, first one, since we mentioned about the 3 border crossings, we know that now the rebel-controlled area and the Syrian government-controlled area has been changed. Have you updated any operation plans? Because I know that, as I understand, you operate from different controlled areas. And secondly, yesterday I asked this question to Steph. I'm going to ask you guys again, that how is the UN staff safe in this escalation of conflict? How many international staffs are still in Syria, and where are they now? Especially those who were in Aleppo. Thank you.
Thank you. Which one is going to go first? Do you want to?
Well, I will take that. We have a staff still in Aleppo. We have over 152 staff members, national and international, currently in Aleppo. The first contact that the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or HTS made with our staff there was to assure them of their safety. Some of them still don't feel safe. We are organizing a relocation for them, but we made it clear to everyone that we will maintain our capacity there by deploying people who can work in this kind of environment, and together with our colleagues who operate on cross-border, we will try to maximize the ability to reach as many affected people as possible. Also, it was a positive sign that the HTS, for the first time, allowed the Syria Arab Red Crescent to operate in a territory that it controls. This didn't happen before, and we take it as a very positive sign. SARC is the largest organization in the country, and it has a network of local NGO partners. And so that network remains intact, and we will rely on it for the delivery of humanitarian assistance.
Thank you.
I don't know if Rama, you have anything to add.
Go ahead, Rama.
Yeah, thank you. The only thing that I would add is that, between Adam, myself, and my colleague David in Gaziantep, we are in constant. We have constant communication with. We have communication channels with the various member states as well as the parties to conflict, and we are exercising these channels in order to ensure that we are able to plan, and we are able to maximize our reach towards the humanitarian, to reach the people in need, and also to ensure the safety of the humanitarian workers, including UN staff.
Thanks, gentlemen. It's Margaret Bashir, Voice of America. Rama, you just sort of started to answer my question. Since the front lines are so fluid and territory is changing hands in the last 6-7 days so rapidly, is your deconfliction process still working? And do you have stocks that you can get to that are pre-positioned? Are they still accessible to you? And have you run any convoys since this started? Or, have you actually been able to do any distribution? Because it seems that it's rather chaotic. Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I will take a part of it, and probably my colleague Adam can come in for the other part. The deconfliction process is working, but it's not easy. As you know, in a situation which is fast moving and fast evolving as this, with a multitude of parties to conflict, there are so many contact points to be made, so many messages to be passed, all the while ensuring that the wires don't get crossed. So it is working. In fact, yesterday, I'm happy to report that we were able to, through various contacts at various levels, including with member states, we were able to facilitate the crossing of a significant number of people into northeast Syria. Around 5,000 families, that's what I'm told, but we are still verifying the numbers. Now, let me pass the floor to my colleague Adam, just in case you would like to add something.
Yeah, well, in essence, those are two questions. When it comes to the deconfliction part, as Rama said, it's complex, but it's working. And we are maintaining an adequate division of labor, who should talk to who, and so on and so forth. And today we had a meeting that was largely dedicated to that purpose. So there is a deconfliction system, and it's working, and we will continue to refine it as we go forward. That is on that one. On the distribution, so far there has been a very limited distribution, mostly done through local NGOs and SARC in Aleppo. As we are in the UN undertaking a process of reconfiguring our presence on the ground, and that would enable us to do the proper assessments needed before commencing our own independent operations.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. A follow-up to that, can you specify for us who exactly you're speaking to, who was at this meeting today, which member states are you speaking with? If you could give us some names, that'd be great.
Go ahead, John. If one of you could take the question.
No, I didn't get the question. Did you mean that? Did you refer to Michelle? Did you refer to the meeting that Mr. Adam referred to today?
Yeah, the deconfliction meeting, and also just generally, you mentioned you're speaking with member states, the warring parties. If you could just give us names of which parties, which states, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop short of naming the parties to conflict whom we are in contact with. But all I can do is assure you that we are in touch with all of them, through different arrangements, so that, because there are a lot of sensitivities involved in naming one and not naming other, or for that matter, not naming one, but naming the other. So you will understand my sensitivities on this. And in the interest of ensuring that our communication channels with them remain intact and effective, I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. You are a diplomat, Rama.
Yeah, and I will say that we talk to all member states with influence, and to maintain that degree of confidence and trust, we would rather not name them publicly.
Excellent. Thank you. Dawn?
Thank you. Dawn Clancy with IPS News. I wanted to follow up on the deconfliction discussion. Forgive me if you mentioned this, I may have missed it, but when you talk about talking to all the stakeholders on all sides to protect civilians in Syria, what, if anything, have your discussions been like about the threat from the skies, like bombing, Russian planes bombing, Syrian regime bombing? When I knew that we were having this briefing today, I reached out to some regular people that in Aleppo, and that was their main concern, is this threat from the sky. Is that been part of your discussion, or is that part of your deconfliction, or what can the UN do to help protect these people who are, in some cases, a little, excited for what's happening, but at the same time, they're not really sure if they can go outside?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Rama.
Thank you. Thank you, Sven. So, throughout our messaging, including the messaging of our principles, we have maintained one thing. We have always called for the observance and the adherence to the obligations under the international humanitarian law, which mandates the protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure, as well as the protection of humanitarian workers and the humanitarian assets, including the vehicles, the warehouses, and so on and so forth. And we continue to stress that in all, not only publicly, but also in all our bilateral communications, in all our bilateral discussions, we continue to do that. And that is also a particular part of our deconflicting mechanisms where we pass these information and ensure that these places are protected. And it's always a constant advocacy topic when we engage either in the deconfliction mechanism or at the advocacy level with various parties. It's always a key part of our efforts, our advocacy efforts. I stop there.
Can I just follow up on that? I understand emphasizing responsibility under international law, but as I'm sure you're aware, these days international law seems to be up for interpretation as far as who follows it and who doesn't. So, I can go back and I can say this to people who've reached out to me, and they're just going to say, yeah, okay. So I guess my question, sorry. How would you respond to that? International law, yes, of course, we want everybody to follow it, but that's just seems not to be the case these days.
Well, as humanitarian actors, that's what we can do to remind the parties publicly and privately of the need to uphold their obligations under international law. There are other bodies that are charged with the duty of documenting all of this and maybe seeking accountability. But that's not the role of the humanitarians.
Thank you. We'll go online. We'll come back in the room. Abdelhamid, go ahead, please.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the briefing. I have a few questions interrelated, so you might take it all together. First, I want to ask about the safety of the civilians in the areas where the rebels took over. What reports you receive about their safety? And second, there are also news says that those who were displaced in the earlier conflict, now they're going back to their villages. How true is that? So there is this new displacement, but also there are some repatriation. And if there is any trace of any foreign fighters infiltrating the borders and coming to join the rebels. And last, are you prepared for the counterattack and the atrocities could be committed in the next few weeks? The Syrian regime is preparing for a counterattack, and the humanitarian catastrophe, it could be enormous. Are you prepared for that? Thank you both for taking my questions.
Thank you. I don't know if Adam, do you want to go first?
Let me try. With regard to civilian casualties, yes, we have reports of hundreds of civilians who died. We don't have the accurate numbers yet. We hear reports of bodies that have not even been collected for dignified burial. But we haven't been able to go out and conduct a thorough assessment to share with you accurate figures. But we know that there are hundreds of casualties. In the media, you'll see the various parties speaking about hundreds from the other side being killed and so on and so forth. But again, we only know in general that there are both fighters and civilians in large numbers who have been killed. With regard to foreign fighters, we see this in the media. We don't have any accurate information about foreign fighters that have not already been in the country, that have arrived after the events of last week. But of course, as everybody knows, there are many foreign fighters fighting alongside both sides here in Syria. And with regard to the possibility of a counterattack, it is a scenario that we build our planning around. We hope it doesn't materialize and doesn't produce casualties. But if and when it happens, we are prepared to deal with that scenario as well. As our commitment is to stay and deliver in all circumstances.
Thank you. Inam, please.
Inam Tahan, Associate Press, thank you so much for sharing this information with us. My question, actually, Mr. Abdul Hamid, he questioned you before me, but I would like to add, are you planning to work with the Syrian government directly in order to save the civilians that remains in Syria?
What is the question?
That's the question. Is are they willing to work directly with the Syrian government to protect the Syrian who remains in Syria and they've been attacked by foreigners and by those rebels that, from many nationalities?
Yeah, we work with both sides, with the Syrian government. I am talking to you right now from Damascus. We work with the Syrian government day in and day out. And we also work with the other side, with the non-state armed groups. And we keep saying that as long as there is an authority of any sort that controls a territory that has people who need our services, we will be there for them. So that applies to all sides. Yeah.
Thank
If
you.
I may just add
Yes.
on that, sorry.
No, go ahead,
Just
Rama, go ahead.
Yeah, we are humanitarians, so we don't choose whom we work with. We are all, by obligation, we work with everybody who is a party to the conflict, if that is what is going to help us reach the people in need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Adam, I want to thank you. Rama, I want to thank you. And just a reminder for those of you who walked in progress, Adam was speaking to us from Damascus, where he is the resident coordinator and the humanitarian coordinator, and Rama was speaking to us from Amman, where he is the regional humanitarian coordinator for the Syrian crisis. Gentlemen, thank you, and thank you to your teams, and we hope to see you back here soon.
Thank you very much, Istvan, and thank you all for participating and for giving us the opportunity to share these highlights with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sven,
Bye.
and thank you, members of the press corps. Thank you very much.